Alright guys, time to resume Project Mercedes. Make use of good Corona time, right? Let's get this done. Okay, so right here, this is my makeshift job that fixed my oil consumption for the time being. My CCV is bad, right? And what the CCV is when you look, here's the front of your engine, right? On the passenger side over here, this side back in here, all the way back here, you can see right here where my finger's at, this pipe right here actually goes back to the back of the head. So the head on that side, at the very back of the head, there's a metal bracket. On other models it's plastic. On this particular model it's a metal bracket, and that is your CCV on this. And then it comes off into this tube right here that you can see, right? So this tube right here actually goes right down here into your intake. So you see this right here goes over to your air box over here, and then it comes in here. This is where it goes into your turbo that is right there. Back there is the turbo. Okay, so your air intake, where it splits right here, you have to take this screw right here, you have to back it out, that clamp. You have to loosen that clamp, and then over here you got another clamp, you have to loosen that clamp, right? And then on top of the turbo, you can kind of see where my finger's at right there. There's a clamp right there. You have to loosen that clamp, right? Once you loosen those clamps, this whole intake piece right here pulls off. Okay, you may see this connection right here. This is your air intake sensor, and there's another one over here. So in order to remove that part completely, you'll have to unplug those two sensors. I unplugged both of those sensors, loosened those three clamps, and that plastic piece pulls right out. And when you pull that plastic piece out, I'll put right here, this is what the inside of my turbo looked like when I pulled that off. You'll see your turbo kind of swoops down, and there leaves a dip right there before it goes into your turbo. And if you look at that, you'll see all of that oil setting in my turbo. That oil had nowhere else to come from but my CCV. Alright, trying to film it this way may make it a little bit easier for you guys. So you've got this clamp here. This whole plastic piece right here has to come out, right? So you've got a clamp here, one right there that you have to get, and then when you look, you can see that clamp right there. It'll be right here. This clamp right here. You have to loosen that clamp, and that's right on top of your engine. Like I said, once you pull that cover off, this right here won't be here. This is my makeshift job to keep me from using all that oil. Okay, so you unhook that sensor right there, and that one right there. You unplug those sensors, those three clamps. This plastic piece comes off, right? Now, I'm gonna put right there, that's what my turbo looked like. When you first pull that thing off, that inlet for your turbo right there should be empty. It should be clean. And mine had a bunch of oil, as you can see, setting in it. So, what we're looking at, my makeshift job right here. When I pulled this right here, this tube right here, this is my makeshift. From this point on is just an extra hose, right? So this is all extra. this plastic piece right here actually is supposed to plug in right there. It actually goes into the side of the intake tube right there. Okay, now where that goes in, this tube right here goes back. And if you look here, it goes back right here, and then right there is your, I want to get this to focus. Right back here is your CCV. If you follow this back, you can't really see it, but I promise you it's there. I can't really get it on camera. But anyway, you follow that back, that is your CCV. This thing ain't focusing for crap, is it, guys? Sorry about that. But, so anyway, if you follow this tube, this will take you back to your CCV. So when where that tube goes back to the CCV and it plugs into your intake right in front of the turbo, what's happening is the CCV valve allows pressure from the inside of the engine. Like when your pistons are going up and down, all that explosion pressure inside your piston, some of it blows by your piston rings, puts pressure inside the engine block, right? So that pressure makes its way up through the engine into the heads and everything, and on the back of that head is, on the passenger side, is a valve that actually opens up and vents that pressure off. And instead of it putting that oil vapor into the atmosphere like on old cars, all this new emissions stuff actually has it ported into your intake right in front of your turbo. So your turbo then blows that back into your combustion chamber, and then it's reignited. So you're burning that oil vapor instead of venting it. So when I took mine out of that intake, it was constantly blowing the oil vapor out of it. So that valve is always open and it's always venting all of that oil vapor. Well, what's going on, it's supposed to close. It's supposed to kind of actuate a little bit, and when you give it gas and you start actually sucking through your turbo, that valve isn't supposed to allow any oil, actual oil from your head into the turbo. So what's happening is that valve is staying open. Your turbo is cracking open and it's sucking all of that air through. And as a side effect, it's actually sucking through that tube as well, because as I showed you, that tube connects to your air intake right in front of the turbo. So the turbo is pulling, it doesn't care where it comes from, it's just pulling it. So it starts pulling it through the engine, and when it's pulling it through the engine as well, it pulls all that oil with it. So then you're sucking all of that oil into your turbo, and then your turbo is putting it through your intercooler. I had to think of the term. So then the turbo sucks all that oil in, and it blows it out through the intercooler, kind of halfway clogging up your intercooler. And then it goes from your intercooler over into your intake in your engine, and then it's blowing all of that oil into your engine. And if you still have your DPF on your car, you won't for long, because all of that oil is going somewhere. You're not burning all of it. So what you're doing is you're going to take all of that oil and you're going to put it right over in your DPF. Then your DPF's going to start plugging up. And in my experience, I'm fairly confident that my DPF got plugged up because of that oil. And because of that valve putting so much oil in the system, it wouldn't run a regen cycle. And that's why when I took it to Mercedes, they said, well, we can't even get it to run a regen cycle, so you're going to have to replace your DPF, and then we'll get it to regen. Well, $5,000 wasn't happening. I deleted all of mine. So now I'm still having this oil issue. And so what I did, when I took that valve off, it's constantly breathing. So my valve is always open. Hence what I've done here. So what I've done is this vent tube right here has an orange rubber gasket on it, and it goes right here. If you look right here, this is your air intake. You step back and look, you see your air intake right here. This Y's in together right here, and this piece, this plastic piece right here, as you can see, goes back. That is your turbo right there. Right here is where this plastic piece, that clamp right there, that is where this plastic piece goes onto your turbo. Right here in this plastic piece is a hole that plugs into, and it just pushes in. It doesn't snap in, it doesn't clamp in or nothing, it just pushes in. So what I've done is I've covered that intake part up with some tape. I know, not the best thing to do. If you guys can come up with something better than that, I actually covered it with a piece of plastic, and after I covered it with plastic, I taped the crap out of that plastic to hold it on too. As you can see, I got tape here, and it runs all the way around that piece of plastic, and it goes around that piece of plastic several times, and it's holding another piece of plastic over that hole, covering the hole. So the turbo is actually breathing through both of these and not that hole. But anyway, where this would plug into the intake, I've got it removed from the intake, and I've got a piece of hose on it. I'm wanting to say this is 1.5 inches. I could be wrong, I can't remember exactly. I just went to the parts store and they found the right size hose for me. It cost like, I'm wanting to say this whole makeshift job right here cost me like $4, $5 maybe. So, like I said, I got this piece of hose. This hose was a whole lot more expensive than this hose. So, I just got a short piece of this hose. Actually, I think they gave me this because it was a scrap piece of hose. So, but I got this hose. I got this hose here. There's no pressure on this. This isn't pressurized. It's just a vent. It's venting air pressure, so it's just got free air running through it. So, it doesn't have to be perfect. But I just got it sealed up enough so that I'm not leaking oil vapors onto it. So, clamped it onto that part, clamped it onto this hose here, and then I got this hose here. It runs down, right down there, and to the ground. I don't know if you can really see down there, but it's actually out through the frame onto the ground. So, again, this hose here goes to your CCV. If you follow it back, that's the part you're going to want to replace. If you look back here where my hand is at, if you follow this hose right here, it plugs in right here to your intake. This hose is part of your CCV. This whole thing will be part of your CCV when you replace it, or at least it is on mine. Some of you guys have a plastic one, some of you guys have a metal one. Now there is also a sensor. This actually has a sensor in it. Right there. See that? I don't know exactly what that is. You can see it right there. Okay. So that sensor will come with the CCV when you order the CCV. It does with mine. So, but then like I said, this hose onto it, and then another hose to vent it to the atmosphere. So it's venting to the ground, basically to the atmosphere. That's what they did in the 80s, the early 90s, and anything built before that. It all vented to the atmosphere, and now, due to these emissions standards, they want it sucked back into the engine. And with that turbo sitting there, here's a good shot of it. You can actually see this right here that I'm touching, this whole thing right here. That right there is your turbo. Right here, you can see, is where it clamps together. This hose right here actually goes right here into this pipe, right? It's a good view of it there. So, like I said, you just pull that out, put this hose on it, and run it to the ground so that that oil isn't all over your engine. And that should solve your oil consumption issues. Now I'm not going to say that that is a good permanent fix. I would order that part. I'm ordering that part today. And I'm going to make use of my Corona time and get that thing fixed. So once I go to actually replacing the part, if you guys want a video of how to do that, let me know, and I'll try to get that done too. And another thing I'm going to be doing is replacing the oil pressure sensor, or oil pressure valve. I will be replacing that as well. And today I actually have to pull it off and verify the part number, because there's a whole lot of different variations. And I know when I replaced my fuel filter, I had to get a 2013 fuel filter, even though this is a 2012 model. So, you know, 2012 and 2013 are different on a lot of parts. So I'm not quite sure about my oil pressure or my fuel pressure sensor. But the fuel pressure sensor here, this is your fuel pump right here. If you look at your engine, right there is your fuel pump. Okay. Here is your fuel pressure sensor. Here is your fuel pressure control valve. So this controls what kind of pressure you're supposed to have in your fuel rails. This right here senses what the pressure actually is, and that's what relays it to your engine. If any of you guys have those kind of codes, that's where that stuff is at. First culprit though, first thing to check actually is right there, which is your fuel filter. I've already replaced mine, but if any of you guys need to replace it and you're not quite sure how, I don't think there's been a single comment on any of my videos that I haven't answered or responded to. So if you guys want to know how to do that, or what all's involved, or, you know, steps or anything like that, just let me know in the comments, and, you know, I'll get back with everybody. I haven't left anybody hanging yet. So, or if you got any more questions on this for the CCV valve, like I said, I've answered everybody, and I will continue to do so. Sometimes it might take me a day or two, but I will do that. And if you guys need video information or documentation, whatever, just let me know. Huh? Heck, I got one right here. I'm doing it anyway, right? So, like I said, that's my step for that, and I will be coming back at you with a video on how to actually change it. Enjoy.